Hi and welcome back to Mr. Allred's 5 Minutes On. Today I'm going to be talking about industrial relations, really employer-employee relations and the trade union movement. This is really designed for an A-level standard. So if you are a GCSE student, no harm in having a look at this video, but this is way beyond what you would need for a GCSE. And there is another video on my YouTube channel which will help you that called Trade Unions, and it should help you with that and the knowledge needed for that. So if I asked you the question then, who has more power, the employee or the employer? Most people's instinct would say the employer. The employer is the person providing the job opportunity and therefore should have more power. And that is often the case in a range of organisations. What a trade union is then is an organisation which looks to bring together workers in a specific industry and in order to protect their interests in work. Essentially what they're trying to do is readdress that balance of power within organizations, to take some power away from the employer and provide and give that to the employee, and to address that balance of power. Often lots of things that we take for granted have come out of trade union movements, such as paternity and maternity pay, such as the weekend, such as annual leave being paid. These are things which we take for granted, which are because of the trade union movement. Trade unions might fall into three categories. They might be a craft or skill union. These are things that protect specific skills. For example, the National Union of Journalism, protecting people in that field with a specific skill of journalism. There might be industrial unions. So these are ones that cover one specific industry, like teachers unions. They cover people who do that specific job. And then we have general unions who look after skilled and unskilled workers in a range of different professions. Members will pay a fee to be part of the union, and that allows them to access the benefits of being in a union. So let's have a look at those benefits. Let's have a look at how a trade union tries to readdress the balance of power. And the way they do this is through the idea of collective bargaining. We might think about it as the power of many. If I, as an individual, go to my employer and ask for a change in conditions or change in pay, it's often unlikely to be listened to because I'm on my own. But if I'm in a union and I have union backing and I have all the members of the union behind me and my union representative is doing that communication, that's collective bargaining. That's the power of many. That's us going to our employer at a single time saying we want better conditions or we want better pay. That should, in theory, get us better conditions or whatever it is we want to fight for. This negotiation then is really the biggest part of what a union does. Often people will see the big ticket things like a strike, which we'll come on to later, but really negotiation is what a union's role is. Beyond that, they do individual representation. Often people get dismissed for certain things in work, or they are discriminated against. A union will provide support and advice on an individual basis to that person. That might be, if you're going through to a tribunal or a hearing of some sort, then providing you with legal support. And often that's a motive for joining a union because you couldn't afford that on your own in certain professions. Beyond that, they act as a pressure group. The national minimum wage has been in place now for a number of years, but it was unions that really pushed on that, and it was unions that really tried to drive that forward. Yes, they can't make that change in every organisation, but they can lobby governments, they can encourage governments and ministers to make changes to that law, and that's what they often do. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean they're always going to be successful. There's always a pay change or a condition change or a pension change that might impact workers negatively, and therefore the union might have to engage in industrial action. One of the ways they can do that is a strike. That's withdrawing their labour for a period of time, and therefore they don't get paid for that, but that completely stops the productivity of the business. Less than that, and what gets used more often, is such things as work to rule, or work to contract it might be called, colloquially known as an Italian strike. You see, in my contract there might be lots and lots of things, but there might be things that I do in my job but aren't in my contract. Well, at this point then, I only do what's in my contract of employment. Therefore, productivity starts to slow because I'm not doing those extra additional tasks, which helps to streamline things within the business that the business might take for granted. Both of these measures are designed to hit the customer, designed to hit the consumer, designed to stop production, to prevent them meeting deadlines. Or in the case when BA had a strike with their workers, grounding flights and directly impacting the consumer. It's impacting profits, and the theory is then it'll exact change, and they'll force the change to happen and force them to meet them often halfway. Over the years, union density, which is the percentage of workers in a union based on the whole number of people in work, has fallen. However, there's been some changes in this. Male participation in unions fallen massively, but female participation in unions has increased dramatically over the last few years, and that might be due to changing situations within society. What's caused the union density as a whole to fall really is the change of our nature of work. Historically, primary and secondary sectors were quite large in the UK. We're now more service driven, and there's more unions covering those sorts of industries in the primary and secondary sector than there is in the service sector, and therefore more people start to join those different unions. Other than that, really, legislation has taken place. In the 1980s, Thatcher and her Conservative government put through a load of laws that were to do with trade union reforms, and people might argue that's actually eroded the power of trade unions, taken the power of trade unions away, and therefore they can't engage in as many activities as they could. But there's some real benefits of being in a trade union. In theory, it protects my rights, it gives me some safety and gives me power in number to take on an employer. It gives me a voice. It gives me a voice to talk and safety to talk to my employer about things that are affecting me without the threat of losing my job or the threat of coming under pressure within my job. Workers therefore feel supported. They feel like they have an outlet to talk to, and that can be really beneficial for motivation stakes. However, there are some drawbacks and some really good evaluation points to draw on this. There's a question over power. That's a massive evaluation point. How much power do trade unions actually have these days? With modern HR techniques, are they needed? Do they need to be there? Most businesses have opportunities for employers to talk directly to them. So therefore, is a trade union needed? Is there any point to them, or is it just an archaic institution where business has now moved on and organisations have moved on, but they haven't? There's an argument to explore there. Decision making can be slower in organisations as a result, because if I have to run everything by a trade union and my trade union representatives, that slows down my decision making process, and ultimately might mean that decision we want to do is watered down somewhat. The question could be, could workers feel that they have more power than they actually do? They feel that being part of a union means that everything they say has to be taken, and that's simply not the case, and often that doesn't happen, and therefore is my voice then felt like I'm not being listened to, and as a result I get demotivated. That's Mr. Allred's 5 minutes on, slightly longer this one, I do apologise for that, but hopefully you've learned something. Please like the video and please subscribe.